All right, so game five between the Toronto Raptors and Orlando Magic happened, I think, about a day and a half ago, 2 days ago. And there's not really much to say about this game that was different from the previous game, guys. Most people had the Raptors just finishing the Magic off and essentially making this a gentleman's sweep. So, yeah, it wasn't really surprising to me that the Orlando Magic kind of went on like a small mini run for like 3 minutes, and that was all she wrote. Like there was nothing left in the tank after that. So we take a look in the first quarter as usual. Magic go out to. We'll start off with start trying to go for a run, but it's not really enough, and they get into a lot of foul trouble as well. You had 3 fouls on Vucevic in the first quarter, so he's forced to be taken out, and when he's taken out or called for his third foul, Ross is called for a technical because he's upset about it, and you can just tell, like in that particular moment, the Magic are done. Like they're just straight up like just done. They can't. They're gonna lose this game, right? And at that time, the moment that foul was called on both Ross and Vucevic, I was just like, I might as well turn off the game right now because I can pretty much bet half my life savings that this game is just won by the Raptors. Now, prior to this, Lowry was being aggressive. He was really heating up. He goes on a 9-0 run by himself, and this is when Steve Clifford is kind of forced to take a timeout. Now, if you've been paying attention to this series in general, one thing I want to point out is that every time either team went on a run in the first quarter, like for the Raptors, they were never forced to take a timeout because of a run in the first quarter. Nick Nurse stuck with his guys and they powered through. Usually he would take a timeout in the third quarter once they got complacent and a little bit sloppy and, just like let the Magic get back into it. But for every single run the Raptors pieced together in this series in the first quarter, Steve Clifford was forced to take a timeout. And his timeouts didn't really, I want to say they were like a 50-50. Like for half the games they were effective, but for this game, nah, it didn't do jack shit. So we're about halfway into the first quarter, right? It's Magic 3, Raptors 19. And with 3 minutes left, it's 28-7. And I really thought the Magic were going to finish the quarter with under 10 points. Needless to say, that didn't really happen. They went on a 12-4 run to make it a 14-point deficit. So it's not that bad. And Ross was actually able to inject some life into the Magic because he was really in charge of this little run that they managed to put together. So we go into the second quarter, and Nurse immediately resorts to the bench. He wants to give, people like Norman Powell, Fred, Ibaka even, and somehow you got Meeks in there as well. He just wants to give these players some valuable, playoff experience, and he just lets them play it out, right? He ends up taking out Meeks for Lowry because the offense starts to stall just a little bit. Like no one can buy a bucket for some reason, and the frustration on the end of the Magic continued to mount because they should, in their mentality, have been able to take advantage of the fact that Lowry was out and that half the lineup currently at that time was benched. So they really wanted to score some points, but they just couldn't. And there was one moment where the camera panned to like Ken Burch being very, very upset and distressed, and that just summarized Magic fans at that moment. Now, something also of note: Lowry takes four charges at some point, like in the second quarter. He's like, this is including the first and second quarter. He has 4 charges, and that really stymied a lot of the offense that Vucevic was was seeking to get in the first quarter. I think he also took a charge on Aaron Gordon, or maybe it was Jonathan Isaac, but his charges that he took were really instrumental in kind of forcing the Magic into foul trouble again and just hampering their attempts to kind of establish some sort of rhythm, right? Raptors at one point led by 20, and to close off the second quarter, I just want to throw back to a point where the DJ Augustine tries to go for some dribble penetration, and Marc Gasol has a vicious, like you can hear like pow block on him, and it's all ball, and it's just whew, it's pretty bad. I think Lowry may have somewhat jammed one of his fingers, or he had kind of like a hand injury briefly in the second quarter towards the end. I don't think it's too much of a big deal. I think he'll be able to play it off. So second quarter is done, and at this point, I'm just like, there's nothing too like important to anything that could change. So I actually go and buy groceries, so I don't have much for the third quarter, except for the fact that Vucevic is finally subbed in after only seeing 6 minutes in the first quarter, and I think I got back after buying groceries at like what was it, half the third quarter had been done, and nothing really had changed. I like looked at the play-by-play on ESPN, and it's just, you know, Magic would get a bucket here and there, Raptors would extend the lead, and this is where I'm glad that I managed to see a barrage of threes. Like Kawhi starts heating up, and they just continue to push this lead over and over and over again. Everyone on the Raptors is just having a field day with the Magic offense. Like their entire offense fell apart after the first quarter. It didn't matter that Jonathan Isaac was in here, because let's be real, Siakam has kind of figured out a way to score on Will, and they just do not have, like, if Isaac isn't shooting it well, they don't really have much of an answer. Like, look at this. He was 1 for 7. Aaron Gordon was I want to say, their best player. Actually, no, it was DJ Augustine. Never mind. But it seemed like Aaron Gordon was the only one that was just trying his best to like will his team to a win. But he was shooting poorly. You just see Evan Fournier, you know, a bit of an improvement from the, what was it, game 3 and game 2, but it's too late now. And I think towards the end of the third, it's something like a massive 24-point lead. So we go into the fourth quarter, and Siakam and Kawhi are subbed out. The bench takes over completely. But the problem is, this is like pure bench. Like, we're talking Jody Meeks, Eric Moreland, Jeremy Lin. I think Jordan Lloyd was even in there. Did he play? No, he wasn't. Never mind. Not Jordan Lloyd. It was Malcolm Miller. That's what I'm talking about. Malcolm Miller, Eric Moreland, McCaw, who finally gets some runtime. I'm really happy that he did. He didn't, like, none of these bench players, if you look carefully, none of them could buy a bucket. So it was like, I think it was 115 to 80 something when Nick Nurse takes out all the starters and then puts in the bench, and the game ends like 115 to 96. Like, they did not score. the Magic go like on like a what, 18 to nothing run or something like that, I think. Yeah, 16 to nothing run. Just an absurd run, and it still doesn't even matter. It's still a blowout because nothing can be done at this point. But yeah, that was a series that many people expected to be a sweep. I personally expected it to be a sweep, but hey, you know, shit happens in game 1. The Raptors really learned their lesson, and I think by game 2, after game 2, they really figured out in general how the Magic operated, and I'm pretty sure they already knew that if you want to neutralize the Magic's offense, you just take out Vucevic, and you know, they did a really good job, particularly Marc Gasol. He did a great job in just, you know, destroying the Magic defensively and offensively. But for the most part, this series was a gentleman's sweep. It was expected. So overall for this series, I would have to say that I think Marc Gasol is the MVP of this series. Like, I know Kawhi had like a monstrous game, and same with Siakam, and even Lowry bounced back. And you can make the case for either of these guys being like, you know, the best player of this series. You know, Lowry with that clutch rebound to seal game 3. Kawhi with his ridiculous performances back-to-back game, you know, and Siakam, who just came up clutch in moments where the Raptors starters were not able to buy a bucket. But I really think Gasol is the MVP of this series just because of his defensive impact. I think after game 1 in particular, he just became more attentive, more aggressive on the defensive end. He wasn't settling and waiting for the ball to get passed into, you know, the players he was guarding. He was actively looking to interrupt passing lanes, and he did it so very successfully. He managed to have a lot of steals at crucial moments that were early in the game, and being able to force the turnovers, being a threat from 18 feet, and most importantly, taking away half of the Magic's offense really allowed the Raptors to operate freely after game one. And I'm really interested to see how he's going to fare against Joel Embiid in the second round, because historically speaking, he gives Joel a hard time. This is going to be a tough matchup for Joel, I think, especially considering the fact that he's not 100% healthy, right? So if Marc Gasol can continue to be this defensive anchor that is able to be an offensive threat when wide open, now the Toronto Raptors are going to be playing Philadelphia in the next round. And this series is actually pretty interesting. Vegas, I think, has the 76ers as underdogs, but I would not be surprised if this went 6 games. And I think, for the most part, it probably will go 6, I think. I don't see Philadelphia dropping in 5 or 4. So that's it for this one. I'm going to see you guys, I think, unless I do a video on like overview of the next round, I'll see you guys probably after game 1 of the second round. Probably.